Hey YouTube, Joyboy here. So, today I want to talk about Ace's sister. And guys, before you judge this theory based on the title alone, hear me out. Because hearing me out will be very, very important to justifying this crazy thought. And guys, I try not to hype things too much, but I swear that if you do in fact reach the end, I don't see how you can come away from this video, even if you don't believe it, without thinking, maybe there's something to this. Maybe this isn't so crazy. And so guys, let's get into it. Let's not beat around the bush. In this video, I'm going to attempt to argue that Ace's sister is Jewelry Bonnie. And so this is not a thought that is original. There are many people out there who have stated this general idea, but I don't think that anyone will have ever argued it like I am about to. But let's start with the very obvious. There seems to be some connection between Jewelry Bonnie and either Ace or Whitebeard or both. This is because Jewelry Bonnie is visibly distraught. She is crying after both Ace and Whitebeard had died. And then later on we can see that she attempts to take some sort of revenge on Blackbeard. Blackbeard, the person responsible for capturing Ace and starting this whole thing in the first place, and then eventually killing Whitebeard. This sequence alone is enough to make Jewelry Bonnie probably the most mysterious and interesting supernova. But unfortunately, this does not prove that Jewelry Bonnie is Ace's sister. In fact, doesn't prove any direct connection between the two, as Jewelry Bonnie could be crying over and taking revenge on Blackbeard because of Whitebeard, not Ace. But you know how I like to lead up to the climactic moment of the theory, so let's start here. There are previous versions, one-shot versions of One Piece that were published before One Piece became One Piece. You could almost call these rough drafts leading up into what became One Piece. And so they were all pretty similarly set up, and we got introduced to various characters in the setting of the One Piece world without it being officially canon. And so in the very first version of this, Luffy meets a very interesting female character who goes by the name of Silk. And it is without question true that this character, after the very first version of One Piece, was destined to be important. And the reason that Silk is so interesting is that Silk is the daughter of a pirate. A pirate who chose to abandon her to be raised by the villagers on this island. And so let's fast forward to the second version of One Piece. And so this same character, Silk, appears in the second version, but under a different name. She is now named Anne. And so I think this is when the connections start to become interesting. If you'll remember, just before Portgas de Rouge gave birth to Ace, she told us that Roger had already decided upon his children's names. If it was a boy, Ace, and if it was a girl, Anne. And so here I think we might have gotten a peek into what would have been the plot twist had Oda followed with this original script. That this person that Luffy met at the very beginning of the story was in fact Gol D. Roger's daughter, Anne. And maybe Roger decided to abandon her on this particular island to keep her identity safe, very much the same as what he attempted to do for Ace in the actual story. Now I'm sure that there will be a lot of voices out there who are saying that I'm looking far too much into this, that this is just Nami, a prelude to Nami, not Gol D. Roger's daughter, with a different name and a slightly different backstory. And I'll admit, this isn't the strongest point of the theory, but I do think that it's very, very interesting. I for sure believe that there is reason that within the actual story, Oda decided to tell us that if Gol D. Roger had a daughter, that his daughter would be named Anne. There's very little reason to put that into the story, unless for some reason or another it might come back up. And I do think that there is something that highly suggests that it will. And I have never seen anyone talk about this, and this will be the real meat of the theory that we are about to get into. But guys, going back to Rouge's and Ace's flashback, when Rouge was carrying Ace, we learned something very, very interesting about Roger. But let's first break down Roger's final years. So at some point in time, Roger came to find Raftel and the One Piece and was announced as the king of the pirates. And then shortly after that, the Roger pirates disappeared. And so did Roger. And we can presume that during this time, Roger came to visit or live with Rouge. The timeline will become important here, and it is actually slightly difficult to piece together. But about 4 years before Roger was executed, he came down with a terminal disease. And 3 years after that, they conquered the Grand Line and the Roger Pirates were disbanded. So there was a 1-year gap between when the Roger Pirates disbanded and when Roger finally turned himself in for execution. And we also know that Ace was conceived around the time that Roger turned himself in and was held in Portgas de Rouge's womb for 20 months until he was finally born. And so this is what it looks like compared to the current time. 25 years before the current storyline, the current events, Roger and the Roger Pirates conquered the Grand Line. He became the Pirate King, and the Roger Pirates disbanded. 24 years before the current storyline, Roger was executed. And roughly 22 years before the current storyline, Ace was born. But we can presume that he was conceived somewhere around 24 years before the current storyline, around the time that Roger was executed. The point here, guys, is that there is exactly 1 year based on the information that we have available in which Roger could have been anywhere doing anything. And so now let's go back into Ace's and Rouge's flashback. The Marine said this: "Are you sure it's this island? Roger was seen here, acting more like a father than a pirate." And in the same panel, we can see Rouge, who is clearly pregnant with Ace. And so guys, I have a question for you. If Roger was acting like a father, how could he act more like a father than a pirate without a kid? Ace wasn't born yet. I honestly believe that this means that Roger had a kid and was actually being a father before Ace was born, i.e., Ace has a sibling, more specifically, a sister named Anne. His older sister who was conceived very shortly after the Roger Pirates disbanded. And I think that the Marines even emphasized my point. They said, check all of the children who were born within 10 months of his arrest, which would mean that they are looking for children who were already born at the time of his arrest. And then they go on to specify to check any of the women currently pregnant. Allow me to reiterate for clarity. Roger was not being a husband. He was not being a lover. He was being a father. You must ask the question, why did the world government suspect that he had a child? It wasn't because he had a lover. It was because they knew he was a father. The father of a child who had already been born. I am fully convinced that Roger has at least 2 children. And so this by itself should be very, very intriguing. But what exactly makes this person Jewelry Bonnie? And I suppose that we will start here. Jewelry Bonnie is named after a very famous female pirate who went by the name of Anne Bonny. I think it would be very hard to believe that her actual name is Jewelry. And speaking of this in particular, wouldn't it be interesting, or isn't it interesting, that you have Gold Roger, even his second in command, Silver's Rayleigh, his third in command, Scopper or Copper Gabon, and then Jewelry Bonnie. But the curiosities just stack on top of each other. We know that Ace was born on the island of Batteria, which is in the South Blue, and we also know that Jewelry Bonnie hails from the South Blue. And maybe less significant but still interesting to me is that both Bonnie's and Ace's appetites are very similar. So guys, this is the story that I would derive from this, that Jewelry Bonnie was born approximately 9 months after the Roger Pirates disbanded. Roger even stuck around long enough to be her father for some amount of time before realizing that he didn't have much time left to accomplish what he needed to, so he turned himself into the Marines. But before doing so, got Rouge pregnant again with Ace. And so for the protection of Bonnie, knowing that the world government would be looking for every place that he stayed before he turned himself in, they sent Bonnie somewhere else to protect her. This adds up so beautifully, even by looking at Jewelry Bonnie's age. Oda addressed her age in SBS, and granted he said that her age was ambiguous due to her devil fruit, but Jewelry Bonnie right now in the current storyline is 24 years old. The very same age that 24 years in the past Roger turned himself into the Marines. Everything lines up. But guys, there's probably more to this story, if it is true. because we know for sure that Jewelry Bonnie has some extensive history with the world government and has specifically been captured by them in the past numerous times, to the point that Akainu was clearly upset that she had escaped. And so many people ask, what is the connection possibly between Jewelry Bonnie and the world government? And I do think that her being the child of Gol D Roger would make this make sense. But then you would have to jump through hoops to explain why it is that she's still alive and why the world government can't seem to keep a hold of her. And so really the only explanation that I and others can come up with is that it has something to do with her fruit. That because of her fruit, she's invaluable in some way to the world government, that they don't want to kill her. The world government certainly took interest in the Opi Opi no Mi, which is able to grant immortality, and Bonnie's fruit could have a similar effect on someone who is near dying or elderly. It would all depend on how it works and what Bonnie's exact relationship is with them. And guys, you could jump through the rabbit hole trying to justify every little thing, but a lot of this stuff really depends on circumstances, and the possibilities are pretty much innumerable, so I really don't feel the need to justify everything. What you should take from this is, based on the dialogue, it is incredibly likely that Ace does in fact have a sister, and if you're looking for a potentially revealed character who might be Ace's sister, by far the best candidate is Jewelry Bonnie. For some reason, she cared a lot about the deaths of Whitebeard and Ace. This is without a doubt important. And if she knows that she is Gol D Roger's daughter, then she would also know before he died that Ace was her brother, because it was announced to the entire world that he was Gol D Roger's son. But as a quick aside before I end this video, I'm not going to say that this is a theory that I outright believe. I just think that it is very persuasive enough to share with you guys. I also know that this theory is older than dirt. What's different here is my exact argument for it. I personally am still debating whether or not I feel more strongly about the possible connections between Jewelry Bonnie and Big Mom. And I also want to give a quick shout out to the person who I don't remember who it was, who reminded me of this theory and inspired me to go back and look into it some more and find these additional clues. But anyway guys, that's all I have to say today. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to check out links to Discord in the description as well as Patreon. I want to give a huge thanks to all of my Patreons for being way more awesome than I could have ever hoped for. Subscribe if you haven't, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.